You know what? Sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that actually happen. And what I'm about to share with you today is one of those moments that makes you stop and think, how desperate does someone have to be to go this far? Let me paint you a picture. It's late January 2026. London's buzzing with the usual royal news, but nothing could have prepared anyone for what was about to explode across every headline from Britain to America. We're talking about a scandal so calculated, so shocking, that even the most seasoned royal watchers were left speechless. Now, before we dive deep into this whole mess, I want you to understand something. This isn't just another royal family drama. This isn't about who wore what or who said something awkward at a garden party. What we're dealing with here is something far more sinister. Something that exposed just how far desperation can push a person when their back's against the wall. So here's what went down. Multiple sources, and I'm talking high-level insiders who know what's really happening behind those palace walls, confirmed something absolutely wild. We're hearing allegations that someone actually tried to blackmail the British royal family. And get this, they allegedly used fake videos, doctored footage, synthetic media, whatever you want to call it. The target? A 22-year-old young woman who spent her entire life serving quietly, staying out of trouble, doing everything right. I'm talking about Lady Louise Windsor. Think about her for a second. She's never courted controversy, never chased the spotlight, never done anything except honor her family and serve her country with grace. And suddenly, out of nowhere, she's dragged into the center of a manufactured crisis that she absolutely did not ask for. The person behind all this? Well, the allegations point to someone who used to be part of the royal family, someone whose empire has been crumbling piece by piece, week by week. Someone who apparently decided that when you've got nothing left to lose, maybe it's time to weaponize whatever secrets you can find. Or create. Let that sink in for a moment. When your Netflix deals fall through, when your podcasts get canceled, when the brand partnerships dry up and the money stops flowing, what do? Apparently, some people decide to go nuclear. Now, the timing of all this is absolutely wild. Just 2 days before this bombshell dropped, Netflix quietly hit the pause button on an upcoming documentary series. They used very careful language, talking about content integrity concerns. Translation? Something wasn't right and they wanted nothing to do with it. At the exact same time, 3 top-level staff members resigned from a certain foundation. We're not talking about interns or junior assistants here. The chief strategy officer walked out. The head of legal affairs said goodbye. When the people running your operations start jumping ship like that, you know something serious is going down. The walls were closing in. And what happened next revealed just how far someone might go when they feel cornered, desperate, and running out of options. But here's the question everyone kept asking, the question that spread like wildfire across social media from London all the way to Los Angeles. How desperate do you have to be to threaten a young woman who's done absolutely nothing wrong? What kind of mindset leads you to target someone's daughter just to get what you want? And here's what really got people upset. The emotional impact on Louise herself was devastating. Palace sources, speaking privately because they couldn't go on record, revealed that Louise basically went into complete lockdown mode. Social media accounts shut down. Public appearances canceled. Everything stopped. She was supposed to appear with her mother at several events that people had been looking forward to. All of it got pulled. This young woman, known for being steady, reliable, and committed to duty, suddenly found herself at the center of a storm she never saw coming, and definitely didn't deserve. So let's talk about the actual threat itself. This is where things get really dark. According to legal sources familiar with what went down, demands were sent through a confidential email on January 23rd. The message went to someone connected to Princess Anne's security team. And the language used in that email? Absolutely chilling. The message was crystal clear. Either restore certain privileges, give back very important person security access, reinstate patronage rights, authorize public statements correcting what was called defamatory narratives, or else. Or else what? Well, that's where the real threat came in. The alternative was that certain footage would be released. Footage involving Louise and her boyfriend Felix. And according to people who reviewed the situation, this wasn't just some embarrassing video. This was allegedly doctored content showing Felix in what appeared to be some kind of compromising situation with someone else. Here's the scary part. Video looked real. To the average person scrolling through their phone, it would have seemed completely authentic. But forensic experts who actually examined it, they determined it was fake. Synthetically generated, created using the kind of advanced technology that can literally fabricate reality. Think about how terrifying that is for just a second. We live in a world now where someone with enough resources, enough motivation, and enough malicious intent can create video evidence of something that never happened. They can destroy someone's reputation, ruin their relationships, damage their entire life, all based on something that's completely fabricated. But whoever tried to pull this off made one critical mistake. They picked the wrong family to mess with. They severely underestimated the protective instincts of the women who would rise up to defend one of their own. The threat went public in the worst possible way. Excerpts from a pre-recorded podcast interview got leaked before the official release date, and in that footage, which spread across social media faster than anyone could control, there was this moment that sent chills down people's spines. The person being interviewed smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was tight, calculated. And then came the words that made everyone realize just how serious this was getting. Something about how certain people in the institution, even young women, had been protected for too long while others were sacrificed. And then this line, "Maybe it's time the world sees what happens when the mask slips." That subtext was unmistakable. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't ambiguous. This was a direct threat, and everyone knew it. Why? Within hours, social media absolutely exploded. The hashtag Protecting Louise started trending worldwide.
We're talking over 130,000 tweets in variations of that theme. People from all over the globe were rallying around this young woman, expressing outrage at what was happening to her.
One former royal correspondent captured the mood perfectly. She wrote something like, "This isn't about one person versus the institution anymore. This is a targeted smear campaign against an innocent young woman. And if this isn't blackmail, then what exactly is it? So why would anyone resort to such desperate measures? What could possibly motivate someone to go this far?" Well, the answer lies in the wreckage of what once looked like it might be a revolutionary new brand of modern celebrity royalty. Sources close to the situation revealed something pretty telling. There was a desperate scramble for relevance happening. Brand deals were falling apart. Public sentiment was turning increasingly hostile. The foundation of what had once seemed like an empire was crumbling. Just a week before all this exploded, a major publication ran a scathing piece about the collapse of certain ventures. The article alleged that a deal with a streaming platform fell through because of serious concerns about narrative control and an inability to deliver content that met their standards. A children's book project with a major publisher? Frozen indefinitely. The market appetite for certain content had basically evaporated, but the financial pressures ran even deeper than failed book deals and canceled podcasts. Security costs were mounting at an absolutely alarming rate. We're talking millions per year. And according to sources familiar with the finances, multiple invoices weren't getting paid. Security firms in California were flagging unpaid bills. This wasn't small money being discussed behind closed doors. These were substantial debts with real consequences. One security analyst didn't mince words when he described the situation. He said something like, "She's boxed into a corner and trying to leverage the only thing she has left, which is access to institutional secrets and reputation-damaging information. But here's what makes the timing of this whole scandal even more revealing. Leaked contract documents showed something devastating. There was a clause that put enormous pressure on delivering content by a specific deadline. And that clause wasn't just about losing future income. It included language about clawing back money that had already been advanced. We're talking nearly $4 million. Translation? There wasn't just desperation for relevance happening here, there was a contractual obligation to create drama, to generate headlines, to manufacture controversy where none existed. And in that pressure cooker situation, a calculation was made that would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Enter Princess Anne. Now, if you know anything about the Princess Royal, you know she doesn't play games. This woman has built a reputation over decades as probably the hardest-working member of the royal family. She values duty above absolutely everything else, and she has zero, and I mean zero, tolerance for manipulation. The moment Anne became aware of the threat, she immediately called a late-night emergency meeting with the royal household's legal and intelligence teams. And according to palace insiders, her position was crystal clear from the very beginning. There would be no giving in to blackmail under any circumstances whatsoever. If the fake footage got released, the palace would pursue full civil and criminal prosecution, globally if necessary, using every legal tool at their disposal. Anne wasn't messing around. She personally ordered a rapid forensic examination of the alleged video materials. Experts from multiple disciplines were brought in to examine every single frame, every pixel, every piece of hidden data embedded in the files. Top barristers were mobilized. A comprehensive legal strategy was developed within hours. Someone close to Anne revealed something really telling about her approach. They said she wasn't angry in the emotional sense. She was surgical. This wasn't about personal feelings or being offended, it was about protecting the institution and defending an innocent young woman who had done absolutely nothing to deserve this kind of attack. Anne has always operated with military precision, and this situation would be no different. She saw this not as a personal insult but as a direct threat to the crown itself, and she responded accordingly. But here's where the story becomes even more powerful. Princess Anne didn't act alone. What emerged over the next several days was something royal observers had never quite seen before in this way. A united front of senior royal women coming together with a single purpose. Duchess Sophie, Louise's mother, issued a private memo to royal advisors that left absolutely no doubt about how seriously she was taking this threat to her daughter. She wrote something powerful. Well, this is no longer a feud. This is a direct threat to the character of a young woman who has done nothing but honor her family. Sophie immediately canceled all her own engagements to be with her daughter, providing round-the-clock emotional support. At the same time, she instructed private investigators to trace where the doctored video came from. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine was coordinating closely with both Anne and Sophie, preparing a comprehensive strategy to defend reputations and control the narrative. One insider described what was happening as a united front of protective maternal strength combined with institutional strategy, and that combination would prove absolutely devastating to the plans that had been put in motion against Louise. An emergency summit was held at Windsor Castle. It was given an internal code name to signify just how seriously it was being taken. The atmosphere was described as emotionally charged but strategically cold. King Charles, who had reviewed all the evidence and signed emergency directives, had given just one instruction to his team. Sophie will lead. Her daughter is under attack. Give her full authority. That decision was both symbolic and practical. This was about a mother protecting her child, but it was also about demonstrating institutional unity and absolute resolve. Sophie arrived directly from home with Louise, who was described as visibly pale and silent, protected by palace staff and kept far away from any possibility of press exposure. Catherine reportedly reached across the table and placed her hand on Sophie's in a gesture of solidarity. "She won't be alone in this," Catherine said with quiet determination. "We fight as one." Then Sophie stood up. And according to everyone who was there, the entire room fell completely silent. "She's threatening my child," Sophie said. Her voice was steady despite the obvious emotion behind her words. "That isn't public relations. That isn't podcast content. That is psychological warfare. And we will respond to it as such." Sophie then proposed what insiders are now calling the Windsor Firewall, a comprehensive three-layered plan that would become a masterclass in crisis management. The first layer involved preemptive legal action designed to stop distribution of any falsified media across all major platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, everything. The palace legal team worked through the night preparing documentation that would be filed simultaneously in multiple jurisdictions. They were creating a legal barrier that would make it nearly impossible to release the doctored footage without facing immediate consequences. The second layer was a carefully orchestrated media operation. Catherine and Anne would quietly visit a children's hospital the very next day, with Louise included in the visit. The message? Continuity, dignity, unity, business as usual. They would dominate the news cycle and shift the narrative away from scandal and toward service. The third layer was perhaps the most sophisticated. A digital file containing comprehensive proof of the video fabrication would be submitted to major press watchdogs within 48 hours. Hard evidence that couldn't be disputed. Sophie concluded her presentation with a line that would become legendary among those who witnessed it. "She wants shock value," Sophie said. "Give her silence and law." Nothing starves narcissism faster than being ignored while simultaneously being legally dismantled. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Rather than engaging in a public war of words that would only feed the controversy and give exactly what was wanted, the palace would respond with institutional power, legal precision, and a public display of unity that would make the allegations seem not just false, but pathetically desperate. King Charles himself drew a line in the sand that morning. At 7:45, still in his robe and having barely slept, he received an encrypted dispatch. The subject line was stark, actionable evidence of potential malicious deep fake attempt. Charles reviewed the evidence in complete silence for nearly 20 minutes. Then he said just one sentence. But it was a sentence that would change everything. "This is no longer about family disputes," the king said as he signed the emergency directive. "This is institutional sabotage. Act accordingly." The document Charles reviewed that morning was comprehensive. It outlined 5 major risks the palace now faced: the deliberate use of synthetic media to fabricate scandal, targeted character destruction specifically designed to trigger public mistrust, strategic timing clearly aligned with financial deadlines, manipulation designed to revive legal leverage, and the monetization of slander under the protective cover of journalistic freedom. The report concluded with an assessment that was chilling in its directness. There may be engagement in coercive media warfare to extract institutional leverage and public sympathy regardless of truth. Following that review, Charles authorized something called Emerald Shield. This was a legacy palace protocol designed for containment of exactly this type of threat. It included rapid removal of damaging content from platforms, legal action spanning both US and UK systems, partnerships with trusted media outlets, and digital forensic tracing to identify origins of manipulated material. The message was clear. The palace was no longer playing defense. They were going on the offensive with every resource at their disposal. While preparations were being made in Los Angeles for what was assumed would be a triumphant podcast release, the British royal machine had already activated something called Operation Blackwing. This was a rapid response digital campaign designed to undercut media threats before publication by shaping the narrative in real time across multiple platforms. The palace's thinking was stark. Someone tried to negotiate their way back into the Crown's ecosystem through threats. Instead, they triggered a full-spectrum media firewall that had been designed for exactly this type of situation. Catherine's communications director quietly instructed a carefully selected network of verified digital influencers and royal family allies to shape the conversation online before anyone else could control the narrative. Key hashtags were launched at precisely 8 in the morning to catch both UK morning audiences and American late-night social media users. Protect Louise, Royal Integrity, Stand with Sophie, Digital Defamation. All of them began trending simultaneously, creating what looked like organic grassroots support when it was actually a highly coordinated institutional response. By 8:30, Protect Louise was the #1 trending topic in both the United Kingdom and Canada. Royal commentators from major outlets were all circulating carefully worded reports suggesting that an upcoming podcast might contain falsified material involving a royal family member. Royal fans flooded social media with comparisons of leaked footage and identified errors in the metadata. Many of them were clearly supplied with technical information from sources connected to the palace's forensic teams. One digital analyst observed that this wasn't a spontaneous uprising of public opinion. This was a coordinated interception of the narrative before it could even be fully deployed. And it was masterfully executed. As the online backlash accelerated and public sentiment turned decisively, corporate sponsors began pulling away with shocking speed. A major apparel company placed an entire collection under review and removed all associated imagery from their website overnight. A wellness brand paused all promotional activity. Even streaming platforms froze advertising for podcast trailers pending review of alleged defamation content. Multiple companies issued subtle but telling statements about their commitment to responsible media partnerships. Clear signals they were distancing themselves without explicitly naming anyone. The financial implications were staggering. Brand equity, which had already been declining, lost an additional 17 percentage points in approval ratings within just 72 hours. A marketing firm released a report showing approval ratings had plummeted to just 23% among UK and Canadian audiences and only 31% in the United States. A catastrophic collapse. A leaked email from a streaming platform's UK team captured the corporate mood perfectly. We will not promote any episode with unresolved legal implications involving non-consenting public figures, especially minors or royal family members. The message was clear. Association with scandal, manipulation, and alleged blackmail had become toxic to brands that needed to maintain public trust. One executive spoke anonymously and was brutally honest. We can't associate with reputational volatility of this magnitude. The risk profile just changed overnight, from controversial but marketable to simply radioactive. Now here's where Louise herself reclaimed her narrative with extraordinary grace and strength. At 11:45, in what would become one of the most powerful moments in recent royal history, Lady Louise Windsor made a surprise public appearance. She was accompanied by her mother Sophie and Princess Catherine at a children's hospital in Oxford. Louise, wearing a soft blue coat and appearing composed, despite everything she'd been through, greeted pediatric cancer patients with genuine warmth. She spoke gently to families going through unimaginable challenges. She posed for photographs alongside Sophie and Catherine that would sweep UK media and trend globally within hours. The symbolism was impossible to miss and absolutely deliberate. This was not a young woman cowering in fear or hiding from manufactured scandal. This was a royal doing exactly what royals do, serving with dignity, grace, and an absolute refusal to be defined by someone else's desperate lies. The narrative was completely reclaimed in a single morning. Louise was no longer the target of scandal in the public imagination. She had become the symbol of quiet royal strength, of dignity under fire, of fundamental decency that people still wanted to believe existed. That night, a major newspaper ran a front-page headline that captured the mood perfectly. They stood for her. Windsor women shut down smear campaign. The message resonated everywhere. This wasn't just about defending one person's reputation anymore. This had become a cultural moment about standing up to bullying, about protecting the innocent, about refusing to let lies and manipulation win. That afternoon, the palace issued what legal observers called an extraordinarily aggressive notification. It stated in unambiguous terms that any broadcast of manipulated content would trigger full legal escalation under UK law. The palace further announced they had obtained technical proof of image falsification and data corruption directly traceable to a California-based media contractor with documented past ties to certain media departments. This wasn't just a personal threat anymore. One security advisor noted publicly that this was now being treated as a digital security violation. The Crown was approaching it exactly as they would treat attempted reputational espionage, and they were using every tool at their disposal. The gloves had come off completely. The palace was making it absolutely clear there would be serious, lasting consequences, despite mounting pressure from every direction, despite legal threats and collapsing corporate support. The controversial podcast episode was released early. Running 58 minutes long, it was promoted as a courageous re-examination of royal structures and a necessary conversation about accountability. But critics quickly noted the episode walked a razor's edge between victim narrative and what many characterized as outright reputational sabotage. The most chilling moment came at minute 36. The voice took on a particular quality that experts would later describe as calculated softness designed to make aggressive statements sound reasonable. "Sometimes silence isn't protection, it's complicity," came the words, especially when young women are being protected from truths they don't know they're part of. Though nobody was named directly, the veiled reference was unmistakable to anyone following the story, and the intent was absolutely clear. This was a threat disguised as social commentary, an attack wrapped in the language of justice. Within 20 minutes of the episode going live, royal family lawyers filed an emergency injunction, alleging intentional reputational targeting through what they termed suggestive language and indirect narrative manipulation designed to create false impressions. The backlash on social media reached extraordinary levels. Hashtags topped trends across multiple countries, with tens of thousands expressing outrage at what they saw as a calculated attack on an innocent young woman. Major news outlets issued breaking alerts noting the palace might pursue legal action, and streaming platforms held emergency meetings to determine whether contractual good faith clauses had been breached. The comment sections weren't just negative, they were scathing. "Dragging a young woman's reputation through coded storytelling isn't journalism," one highly liked comment read. "It's a hit job and everyone can see exactly what you're doing." Another comment, receiving thousands of approvals, asked, "Why always imply and never provide proof? Because if specific claims were made, there'd be lawsuits. And everyone knows it." Then came one of the defining moments of this entire crisis. Princess Anne and Princess Catherine delivered a rare joint video address filmed at Windsor Castle. Standing shoulder to shoulder, what they delivered was what many royal commentators immediately called the most powerful rebuke in decades. Princess Anne, firm as steel and looking directly into the camera, spoke with the authority of someone who has served the crown for over 70 years. "When the integrity of a young woman under our protection is manipulated to serve someone else's redemption arc," Anne said, "we are duty-bound to respond, not with spectacle but with truth, and with the full weight of the institution behind us." Catherine followed with words that carried their own quiet power. "Lady Louise Windsor is not a plot point in someone else's story," she said with absolute clarity. "She is not a pawn to be moved around for strategic advantage. She is a young woman of character and dignity, and she is not afraid." The image of Anne and Catherine together, united in defense of Louise, was immediately picked up by every major UK outlet. This was institutional power on full display, a clear message that the monarchy would protect its own with every resource available. That same afternoon, Duchess Sophie appeared on television to speak not just as a royal family member but as a mother whose child had been targeted. Her voice wavered slightly at first, the emotion clearly affecting her. But then it grew firm and steady. "There is a line between media freedom and personal cruelty," Sophie said, "and that line was crossed. Not just crossed, but deliberately trampled when my daughter became collateral damage in someone else's campaign for relevance." Sophie confirmed publicly for the first time that Louise had listened to the podcast episode and had been hurt by what she heard. But she emphasized her daughter was not shaken in her commitment to service and duty. She ended with a line that would be quoted extensively. "You don't become a royal by marrying one," Sophie said, looking directly into the camera. "You become a royal by defending one, by standing up when someone under your protection is attacked, by putting duty and decency above personal advancement." Then came what many considered the final nail in the coffin. Buckingham Palace released a comprehensive forensic report conducted by a third-party digital media laboratory in Brussels, one of the leading facilities in Europe for detecting manipulated media. The analysis confirmed with over 99% certainty that the alleged video was a deep fake generated using altered footage from a charity gala. The audio layer had been synthesized using advanced voice cloning technology, and the metadata revealed clear evidence of manipulation occurring just 3 days before the initial demand letter. The report's conclusion was damning and unambiguous. This wasn't journalism or legitimate investigation. This was engineered slander created with malicious intent to damage reputations and extract leverage. In early March, a streaming platform issued what they carefully termed a partial retraction and content adviso. RAI. Following feedback from multiple stakeholders and formal legal correspondence, the podcast episode would now include a mandatory disclaimer and would undergo audio editing to remove potentially defamatory inferences. Insiders reported absolute fury about this forced modification, but contractual obligations left no room to resist. One producer stated off the record, "Someone played the royal card one too many times, and now they're finding out the deck was rigged against them from the beginning." The palace announced moves that signaled not just victory in this particular battle, but a comprehensive reimagining of how young royals would be protected going forward. Lady Louise Windsor would receive her first full-time royal patronage, and significantly, it would focus on youth media ethics and digital security, turning her personal experience into institutional change. Felix, completely cleared of all false rumors with his reputation restored, would co-host a major summit on artificial intelligence and reputational safety, bringing together technology experts, legal scholars, and policymakers to address the growing threat of synthetic media. Princess Anne ended her final public comments with a line that has now been etched into public imagination, a line that will likely be remembered as the definitive statement on this entire affair. "We didn't just defend a name," Anne said with quiet authority. "We defended what it means to be royal in an age of digital warfare, and we sent a message that will resonate for years to come. You can attack us with lies, but we will respond with truth. You can try to manipulate public opinion, but we will trust in the fundamental desync. Why of people to see through manufactured scandal? And you can threaten the innocent, but you will face the full institutional power of the crown in response." So what does all this mean going forward? What does it mean for anyone who thinks they can weaponize lies and manipulation against institutions that have survived and adapted through centuries of challenges? The answer seems increasingly clear. You can threaten all you want. You can try to manipulate situations to your advantage. You can attempt to fabricate scandal from absolutely nothing. But when you come for the innocent, when you target the defenseless simply to save your own collapsing ventures and failing projects, the crown doesn't just defend itself. It responds with centuries of accumulated institutional power, legal expertise, and strategic communications capability that can dismantle your credibility before you even realize the battle has already been lost. Someone walked into this confrontation thinking they held leverage, thinking threats and manufactured scandal would force negotiations and concessions. They walked out realizing they had just declared war on one of the most strategically powerful families on Earth, and that family had won decisively before the other side even understood what was happening. The brand that was already damaged and declining may never recover from this catastrophic miscalculation, and the monarchy has sent an unmistakable message to anyone else who might consider similar tactics in the future. They will protect their own. They will use every legal and institutional tool at their disposal, and they will not negotiate with those who threaten the innocent. Look, at the end of the day, this story isn't just about one scandal or one family or one moment in time. This is about what happens when ambition collides with desperation. When someone decides that the ends justify any means necessary, no matter who gets hurt in the process, but more than that, it's about the response. It's about institutions that refuse to be intimidated. It's about mothers who stand up for their daughters. It's about families that close ranks when one of their own is threatened. And it's about young women like Louise who face manufactured storms with grace, dignity, and an absolute refusal to be broken. If you found this story as compelling as I did, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to keep bringing you the stories that matter. The ones that reveal something deeper about power, family, and what happens when people make catastrophically bad decisions. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Do you believe institutions should use their full power to protect members who are targeted like this? Or do you think there should be limits even when dealing with threats? I'm genuinely curious to hear your perspective. And hey, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because this story isn't just entertainment. It's a lesson in consequences. It's a reminder that actions have repercussions. And it's proof that sometimes justice actually prevails. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.